how to transform your business by focusing on what's most important. So let's start at the beginning. In 1906, an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto discovered the 80-20 relationship that basically shows 20% of the inputs generate 80% of the outcomes. It wasn't until the mid-1980s that a global diversified manufacturing company introduced this 80-20 and developed it into a business model. This company grew significantly from about 300 million to 15 billion in revenue and significantly improved profitability and shareholder value. This is the company that I worked for 25 years. And 7 years ago, I retired and joined a company called Strategex, which is a management consulting firm. And we focus on the 80-20 process. We have a team of 80-20 experts that are available based on their average 20 years experience of applying this to many different business models. And where this intersects and what we provide is sustainable, profitable growth. So how do I know if my business needs to be transformed? Well, if you look at this list, what we look for is signs of complexity that lead to these type of issues. On-time delivery issues, longer than desired lead times, especially from your customer's perspective. You have high inventory levels and high obsolete and slow-moving inventory, frequent component stockouts, which again leads to delivery issues, quality issues, both internal, meaning that you actually have the quality problems in-house, versus external, where these quality problems that go into the field when your customers have a problem with your quality. Non-high value added indirect labor in manufacturing. This is all the support personnel required, everybody except the direct labor. And also wasted new product development efforts. You have too many projects, they're not completed on time, and you don't meet the expectations. So this is not a complete list, but if you have some of these, you might be looking at an organization that has a lot of complexity. Overall, these lead to reducing the profitability in your business and can create other problems. So one of the tools that we use to see where customers fit in terms of this complexity is called the Quartile Analysis. The first one we do is based on customers, and what we're looking at is revenue. So in this example, we have 1,600 customers. Number one, we would rank them from highest to lowest. Number one would be the highest revenue. Take a year's worth of revenue and do this ranking. And number 1,600 in this example would be the smallest customer. And then what we do is we put them in buckets or groups of 25% of customers, not of revenue, but of customers. So you can see in quartile 1, we have 400 customers, the largest group of customers. So when we go to the next column, what we're looking for is how much revenue, what is the total percentage of revenue in each one of these quartiles? And what we find after doing this thousands of times is that in quartile 1, we generally get 89% of the revenue. And that's because it's an 80-20 world. This is 25% of the customers, so it's more than 80%. We get about 89%. In the second quartile, 7%, and in quartiles 3 and 4, 3 and 1. So this 89, 7, 3, 1, after doing this, like I said, thousands of times, this is the typical relationship that we see. And in fact, if you looked at our business card, you can see on the left-hand side is the front of my card with my contact information, but on the right-hand side, we have these 4 numbers, 89, 7, 3, 1, and that's because this just happens so frequently, we actually include this on our business card. So now back to the table, the next column is we have the percent of overhead. So if you take out the material cost, take out the direct labor, everything else in the organization is overhead. And so now we look at what is the percent of overhead or effort in each one of the quartiles. Generally, what we find in talking with clients and actually doing the analysis ourselves is that you end up with 25% of your overhead in each quartile. In other words, it doesn't follow the revenue, but where you look at the overhead is actually being consumed, it's 25% per quartile. Well, this is a problem because you can see 50% of our overhead is actually underserving the top 96% of revenue in quartiles 1 and 2. And the 50% that's serving quartiles 3 and 4 is only generating 4% of the revenue. So that is a big problem. And where it shows up is if we go to the last column and look at the percent of profit, realizing that the column has to equal 100%. When you have 89% of your revenue and only 25% of your organizational effort, this is a very profitable quartile. In fact, we generally see that it's 150 to 200% of the profit of an organization. Well, in quartile 2, you can see that with 7% of the revenue, 25%, if you're really good and efficient, you might be able to break even. But in quartiles 3 and 4, you're losing money, and especially in quartile 4, you're losing a lot of money. And so this is what we see in terms of, companies and how they're dealing with complexity. And sometimes it's hidden complexity. They're not even sure how this happens and why it's going on. But what we're really after here is in this box, the 50% of overhead, is we want to go after that because we're consuming way too much overhead down in quartile 3 and 4. And you have two choices. You can reduce that overhead in order to improve profitability, or you can refocus that overhead, reinvest it in quartile 1 type business, because that's where we make all our money. And so most companies that do this, they want to do a little bit of both, but it depends on your profit profile and your profit expectations as to how much of each one, but this is really what we're after. So now when we look at the same data on the left, this is the customer information we just looked at, the 89731, 1,600 customers. Now what we want to do is look at the products. And so when we look at the products, do the quartiles for the products, ranking them by revenue. In this example, we have 2,000 products. We're going to rank them from number 1 to number 2,000 being the smallest, and we're going to put them in buckets. And again, we get the same revenue distribution, 89, 7, 3, and 1. There are two reasons for that. One, it's an 80-20 world, and the 80-20 applies to the customers and the products. And secondly, I only have one set of numbers on the back of my card, so it must happen all the time. And that's in fact what we find when we do the analysis. So now, if you want to find out how do you compare to the template that we just reviewed, there's actually 3 options. You can rank your revenue, take a full year's worth of data, rank your revenue from highest to lowest, do it first by customer, do it second by product, and then group the revenue into quartiles. Calculate the total revenue by quartile. The second option is you can send us an email at the address shown here on the bottom of the slide, and we'll send you a template so that you can easily calculate the quartiles. The third option is you can actually send us your data, and we'll do the analysis, and we'll send it back to you. Okay. So again, if you want to take advantage of any of those opportunities or have any questions, you can email us at this quartiles@strategex.com. The next step is, again, do the quartiles, compare the revenue distribution by quartile. How do the results look? Are they consistent with the 89-7-3-1? Possibly they might even be a little worse, meaning you have more than 89% in the first quartile. If so, this 80-20 process, can help transform your business. So stay tuned for the next video, which will be basically give you some ideas on how do we make decisions using this data. And we'll be releasing that in the near future. And then just to wrap up, I'd like to thank you for your time today. If you have any questions for me directly, my contact information is shown here. Again, the email at the bottom, if you have questions, you can also contact us that way. And we look forward to hearing from you and working with you in the future.